I remember a few years ago mentioning the fact that Iraq would be better divided into three parts, one for the Sunnis, one for the Shias, and one for those people living in Kirkuk who are now establishing a separate little kingdom. Well, it's coming to pass, and it gets to be bloody, though. The pictures that we're seeing are of executions, mass executions of Shia soldiers by the Sunni militia. About 4,000, 5,000 people riding in pickup trucks have caused the entire Iraqi army to flee, drop their weapons, take off their uniforms, and run for their lives. As many as 900,000 people are being beat by 5,000, and we've spent billions of dollars setting up that country, and it isn't working. Well, as I said, a decade after the United States went into there, Islamic terrorists they're capturing cities. They've got Mosul, they've got other cities, and whether they take Baghdad remains to be seen. But now they have bank assets well over $1 billion. Terry?
Well, President Obama is still weighing his options in Iraq as Christians there worry that they could be the next targets. Ephraim Graham has the story.
In their march to take Baghdad, the northern Iraqi town of Tal Afar is the latest to be captured by the militants of the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, known as ISIS. The militants are boasting they've executed nearly 2,000 Iraqi government soldiers, and they've posted some gruesome pictures, though their authenticity cannot be verified. Iraq's government is calling on new recruits to join the fight against the militants, and a crowd of volunteers gathered Sunday to join that fight. Meanwhile, the U.S. State Department has announced plans to partially evacuate the American embassy in Baghdad, and the Pentagon is sending in about 100 troops, including a platoon of Marines, to protect the personnel who stay behind. But President Obama is still weighing his options when it comes to American involvement in the fight.
My first thing to recommend to the president is get your intelligence group back on track, making sure that we have the intel that we need for our whatever options we have that are going to be accurate. 3 U.S. warships, including an aircraft carrier, are deployed to the Persian Gulf. But Democrats are still pushing for the Iraqi government to find a diplomatic solution before any military action. Republicans are warning time is not on our side or the side of the Iraqi people. With the weapons and money stolen in their terror run, ISIS is now reportedly a billion-dollar terrorist army.
What's so heartbreaking is that we had this place in a good spot. They were playing politics rather than killing each other. The decision to withdraw U.S. forces created a vacuum. Syria is a launching pad, and it's all come together. We need air power immediately to stop the advance toward Baghdad. Lost in this battle is what this unrest means for Iraq's Christians.
We're hearing enormous pressure, and believers are saying they feel that they're just minutes away from conflict. They hear it outside. They know it's not going to take long until it turns on them as Christians.
Tom Doyle is the author of Dreams and Visions: Is Jesus Awakening the Muslim World? He has this message for America's Christian community.
To the believers that watch CBN 700 Club and are so passionate about praying, just anytime you see something on television, if you would, remember that it's not just Mosul, it's just not ancient Nineveh. You have brothers and sisters there in Christ that are living in some of the most dangerous conditions in the world. Pray for them.
Ephraim Graham, CBN News.
Thanks, Ephraim. You ask yourself, why was the Obama administration taken by surprise? This thing has been building up for months, and the observers on the ground knew about it. It was in the news, but our national security apparatus doesn't function. We showed you some of the personnel the other day. One of them used to be a limo driver, and they don't have any experience in foreign policy. And there may be a more ulterior thought that the idea is to weaken America, but this thing has just been a disaster. But I'm not sure when it's all said and done, the Kurds have themselves a nation, the Shias have themselves a nation, the Sunnis have themselves a nation. Is that necessarily a bad thing? And I'm not sure it is a bad thing. But what we're going to see next, if there's this brutal slaying of another religious group by these Sunni extremists, then the Shias, under the call of Ali Sistani, the Grand Ayatollah of Iraq, if he calls the Shias, as he has, to come and fight, then by the thousands they're going to be armed, and we're going to have a sectarian civil war that will be the mother of all bloodbaths. And that's what we look like is going to happen. Well, the agents of peace and love, the religion of peace, are at it again. Another deadly Islamic terrorist attack is in the news today, this time in the nation of Kenya. John Jessup has more on that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. Here's John.
Pat, Kenyan authorities believe Islamic militants from Somalia are responsible for a massacre at a coastal resort. Witnesses say the gunmen killed those who couldn't answer questions about Islam, but spared Muslims. At least 48 people died when dozens of men carrying automatic weapons attacked 2 hotels and a police station and then sprayed the streets with gunfire. At one hotel, the gunmen forced the women to watch as they pulled the men aside and then executed them. They claim Kenyan security forces are doing the same to Somali men. Al-Shabaab, an Islamic terrorist group in Somalia, has carried out several attacks in neighboring Kenya. A massive manhunt for 3 Israeli teenagers entered its 4th day today. The 3 were abducted by terrorists while they were waiting for a ride in the West Bank, also known as Biblical Judea. And as Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem, one of the teens is also an American citizen.
The teens were waiting at this bus stop to hitchhike home from boarding school on Thursday night. Catching a tramp, as it's called, is common practice here in Gush Etzion, where public transport is sparse.
I was actually at this bus stop right here just a couple hours before that happened, which is really kind of scary to think about, but also it makes me realize that it could have been me, it could have been any one of my friends.
The kidnapping has gripped the nation. It's believed that terrorists snatched the teenage boys in order to obtain the release of Palestinian prisoners from Israeli jails. In the last year and a half alone, the IDF says it stopped more than 60 kidnapping attempts. There are some 34,000 residents of Gush Etzion in Biblical Judea, an area the Palestinians want for a future state. Authorities believe the teens are being held in the Palestinian West Bank city of Hebron, where security forces are concentrating their search. More than 150 Palestinians have been arrested in the last few days, most of them Hamas members. Hamas denied its involvement, but Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the blame is clear.
The kidnapping was carried out by Hamas members. Hamas denials do not change this fact.
In a phone call, Netanyahu told Palestinian Authority Chairman Mahmoud Abbas he expected the PA to help return the youths and apprehend the kidnappers. Earlier, he said the kidnap is a clear result of the recent Fatah-Hamas unity government.
And the PA cannot absolve itself of its responsibility. You'll remember that Israel warned the international community about the dangers of endorsing the Fatah-Hamas Unity Pact. I believe that the dangers of that pact should now be abundantly clear to all.
Washington has condemned the kidnapping. Gush Etzion Councilwoman Ruthie Lieberman said congressmen can do more.
We want them to speak to the White House, to have the White House speak to Abbas. The Palestinian Authority should not be able to just sit with his hands tied.
25,000 people gathered at the Western Wall to pray Sunday night for the safe return of the boys. As the security forces continue their search, Israelis are hoping and praying for a good outcome. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Pat, all 3 teens were seminary students, and there's already a social media movement calling for their return using the hashtag #BringBackOurBoys.
Well, I'm all for that. You know, there's something else. If you're doing your taxes and the IRS wants some money from you and they want documentation, you say, but the dog ate it. And the IRS will say, well, you're going to jail. But you say, but the dog ate it. I'm just telling you. I mean, look inside him. It's all gone. Well, here at home, though, the IRS said the dog ate 2 years of emails from Lois Lerner. 2 years the dog ate, all of it. And the former IRS official, who's a key part of the investigation into the tax agency's targeting of Tea Party and other conservative groups, Lois Lerner, who pled the fifth, the dog ate her homework.
Here at home, as you just mentioned, the IRS is looking for 2 years' worth of emails from Lois Lerner, but it says they're gone. She's the former IRS official who's a key part of the investigation into the tax agency's targeting of Tea Party and other conservative groups. Lerner has refused to testify before Congress, and losing those emails is a major roadblock for the Republican investigation into the targeting scandal. The IRS says it has worked hard to find Lerner's emails, but critics and technology experts say it's hard to lose emails because there are so many backups built into computer systems. America will likely have more liberal judges in the years ahead as Democrats aggressively push President Obama's judicial nominees through the Senate. Democrats have been confirming more judges since they changed the Senate rules on filibusters and limited the GOP's ability to hold up the president's nominees. Arizona Republican Senator John McCain called the change, quote, a despicable and black act that will live in history. Democrats are making the push on nominees before the elections in November, when Republicans could take control of the Senate. They'd be less likely to approve the president's nominees during his final 2 years in office. Well, finally, obese children could be at risk of diseases like diabetes and high blood pressure. In the past, those diseases were considered mainly a threat for adults. But the Times of India reports on a new study from University Children's Hospital in Leipzig, Germany. It found that kids as young as 6 develop more and bigger fat cells. That leads to increased inflammation and other problems. So young children may face diseases from an early age, and Pat, of course, that could cripple their lives.
Well, there's no question that we've been talking about inflammation and what it means and what the causes of diabetes, type 2 particularly.
The U.S. will assist Nigeria in its fight against the radical Islamic Boko Haram. American lawmakers attended a classified briefing in the Nigerian capital Sunday. Texas Republican Steve Stockman said it will happen pending approval from the U.S. and Nigerian governments, but he did not specify what action the U.S. will take. Last week, New Jersey Congressman Chris Smith said U.S. forces are training a battalion of Nigerian troops to fight the terrorist group. Boko Haram wants to establish an Islamic State in northern Nigeria. This, of course, is the same group that drew international condemnation for kidnapping nearly 300 schoolgirls in April. CBN is sharing the gospel message in a unique way with thousands of people in South Africa. CBN created the Media Ministry Center project with the goal of exposing people to Christ through Christian TV programming. The project equips local pastors and evangelists with DVD players and projector kits to show inspirational programming, testimonies, and Christian movies. The project began in 2005, and now more than 30 centers have been established, and over 970,000 people have committed their lives to Christ. Well, you can find out more about what CBN is doing around the world by logging on to cbn.com/international.